Hey guys, and welcome back to Digital Artcast. Back again here with myself, Gordon, and of course Colin. What up, Colin?
Still kind of laughing a little bit. I'm sorry.
Colin has shared a video.
Oh god, I should not have watched that.
Yeah, we're going to share it in the comments, I think, because it's just too good not to be shared. But yeah, grammar, man, and spelling. It's one of these things, kids. Stay in school. Oh my god. So yeah, Colin's going to recover. Also, he's coughing because he is kind of sick. So yeah.
But my body has done what it usually does when it's trying to get sick,
Yeah.
and like it goes into anti-getting sick mode, and it just like forces me to sleep more.
Yeah.
And I drink like I'm basically drinking like I don't even know how much water every day, but it's too much. But it also cuts down my time being sick by like 100%, like a lot.
Yeah.
So I'll probably be over this in a couple of days.
Yeah, but hopefully Colin isn't working himself to death. Haha! More on that to come. Segue. Okay, so yeah, as usual, we will talk about what we've been doing this week. We'll kick off with Colin because his weeks are always more interesting than mine because he's actually working as an artist. So Colin, what have you been doing?
Well, as Gordon said, I've been working. I've been working a lot, and I'm counting myself lucky that I am working because, like, oh shit, you know what? I do have something to mention that isn't freelance or full time or like Inktober or whatever.
Ooh.
So actually it does relate to Inktober. So remember that one random spaceship I drew? It was like for Inktober.
Oh yeah, the spaceship. Yeah, you said you had to draw more of them.
Yeah, and so someone I work with named Lloyd saw that on Facebook, and he was just like, "Yo, real cool spaceship," and I was just like, "Thanks, Lloyd." And then I walk in today. There's a fucking 3D printed version of the ship sitting on my desk,
Wow.
and I was just like, what the fuck? And I mean, like it wasn't that surprising because Lloyd has a 3D printer sitting beside his desk, and he's constantly, 3D printing the show, the characters from the shows that we're working on. But I was just like, dude, holy crap! Like it's sitting on my desk now, and I'm looking at this thing, and I'm just like,
you drew that.
Fuck, this is crazy.
Did you just walk in and have? I was going to say, just walk in and have an epiphany. You're like, I can make my own toys.
Pretty much. Like my place is even more full of toys than it was before, but like it's a thing that I drew, someone else modeled, and now that I've taken it home, it's all black right now, and I need to like sort of chip away at some of the extra scaffolding that's still attached to it.
The plastic.
But I'm gonna sort of paint over it with Bondo to make it all smooth.
Oh, nice.
And then prime it a couple of times, and then paint this sumbitch, and it's gonna look fucking awesome.
Is that made from the plastic, the kind of Lego plastic that they use in the reels?
It's pretty light and it's hollow, so I'm gonna say yeah.
Yeah, because I think one of the main ones when they started 3D printing was the same plastic that is used for like your Lego parts. I
think it's a tiny bit more brittle just because it's not like a fully formed piece of Lego. It's how do I describe it? Can you hear that? It's sort of it's not totally smooth. It's like it's sort of formed in rings. If that makes any sense.
I love how you tried to scratch it for me to determine the material. I'd be like, yeah. No, I see.
What texture is this? I don't know. But yeah, like it's not totally smooth. It's like it's not rough either though. It's like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like it's ribbed, but it's not. It's
a plastic light texture, I'm assuming.
Yeah, plastic-like texture and yada yada. So. Really cool. I'm gonna do some fun stuff to it, bring it back, show Lloyd. He'll be like, awesome, and I'll be like, can you model more shit and print it? And he'll probably be like, yes.
Nice.
So that's fun. And then this weekend, speaking of crunch time, actually, even though like we're gonna talk about that later, I imposed on myself a self sort of crunch mode and blasted through a whole bunch of freelance work, which I really needed to get done. But the difference with me and other people when they crunch is that I'm crunching to get something done 2 weeks in advance.
Wow.
Whereas like other people are crunching to get stuff done like the day before.
Yeah.
So yeah, like even as far back as like not even my film, but earlier in school, I learned that like if you're gonna crunch, do it early, so like you can forget about it, and then other people are doing the same project 2 weeks later. You're like, oh yeah, that was a thing 2 weeks ago, and I've already moved on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I deliberately gave myself more time for these freelance jobs, or asked for more time than I needed, so I could get things done early and then have a break in between.
Yeah, which is important, obviously, because we're going to talk about that. But like, I'm the world's worst, and as much as I try to work hard, I'm victim to this all the time of leaving stuff for the last minute, which is a deeper conversation about anxiety and fear of failure and all this shit, and what a lot of artists suffer from. But I really did, because I came back to university, I was like, I'm not going to leave it at the last minute again. I'm going to get stuff done early, and I actually started to do decently. Like I've done some extra stuff and tutorials and started building some stuff, and then just last night I was finishing stuff for a 1 p.m. hand, and I was like, no, I can't. I physically can't do this anymore because it ends up killing you, because you're working so late into the night to try and get things finished. And I was missing sleep, and I was like, fuck this, man, I need to go. So moving forward, although it'll only be the third time I've said it this year, but no, definitely 100%. I'm actually just doing some tutorials before I phoned you, sketching some extra stuff, looking at an online 3D tutorial, and I'm definitely like, I need to get my fucking arse in gear. So yeah.
Well, like it's really, really good that like you have the attitude. It's just you've got to continuously, and it's not something you can train yourself to do in a day. Like it's something that you have to continuously condition yourself to do. Like it's a mindset you got to get into, and like it's not something you can just say, okay, I'm gonna do this now. It's like it's weird, and like I've been trying to train myself to do this since second year, and it's still not entirely solid yet. And I even for people like some of the crazy talented people I'm working with at work, or George, I know for a fact that George occasionally blows 400 hours onto Borderlands 2. Like even people like that are they like I don't even want to say have faults, but like sometimes you just need to not fucking do any work.
I mean, like we listened to Thomas Scholes when he done the IW talk in London, and he talked about how like unlocking level 30, as he called it, and he discovered this new thing called patience, where he takes the weekends off and he goes walking, has barbecues, and that actually totally resets his brain for working again during the week. I mean, so you really need, because like we're going to talk about obviously eventually, is that how people drive themselves into the ground, and you need to have that, especially as an artist, when you try to incorporate so much of nature into your world, into your art. You need to go out and experience it, and that's what I was doing at the weekend. I was out running with 10 pounds on my back through our local park, just up and down.
I'm pretty sure Noah Bradley said something like that too. Like, go out and experience the world, so you can put all those technical skills, to something that actually has meaning and something that you've experienced, and not something you just saw online. You're like, that's cool, I'm gonna do it.
I mean, James Gunn is the same. James constantly lives outside and paints and draws outside, because a lot of what he draws and paints is nature, and there's no better source than physically sitting in front of a tree and painting it. You know what I mean? So,
wait, James Gunn, is he the director?
No, James Gurney is the guy who.
Oh, Gurney.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said James Gunn. I'm like, Guardians of the Galaxy?
No, the National Geographic painter. Yeah, so.
Right.
Yeah.
AKA that one painting book that everyone has.
Light colour, yeah, so definitely, so it's a book to look at. I was thinking that as well, actually. I might start trying to get even below in the episodes, like a reading list, if we can start putting one together, for because I know there's like a lot of good, like especially Scott Robertson's books. I was stunned to find people in studios working who didn't know who Scott Robertson was. I was like, ¿qué pasa? like what the fuck? You've never heard of Scott Robertson? Quoi? And but they're like, oh, Scott, who's he? Some kind of film director? I'm like, no, he's pretty much the godfather of concept.
No, the one who, or one of the ones who basically started it all. You uneducated people.
Ignorant swine. So yeah, I think we better start putting a reading list together. But yeah, James Gurney and Scott Robertson are probably the two you want to start with. Every artist.
Actually, speaking of Scott Robertson, even at a studio like Elliot, where it's primarily TV animation, cartoony, it's not quite as technical and like industrial designy as as a lot of other things. I walk through the studio, actually the third building and the second building. In addition to the Scott Robertson books that are on my desk, there's at least 7 or 8 other copies floating around the studio. Everyone has them. Everyone knows who he is.
He's just, I mean, I think he was actually, I can't remember if he was the one who actually said this quote, but somebody did say it and it stuck in my mind forever. And it's an amazing quote. I'll try and find out who said it, but they were talking about the difference between art and design, right? And somebody basically said this one line that I thought encapsulated it perfectly. And they said that, here it goes, design is art with a purpose.
Was that Feng Zhu?
Possibly. I don't know. Yeah.
If not, he said something very similar, like design is not actually art or something like that.
Yeah, but design is art with a purpose, and I thought that's actually so true. Like, it really is. Like, this art will serve a purpose. It will be someone's business card. It will be someone's letterhead. It will be a building, a vehicle, That's what.
Or a character in an animated series,
Yeah,
or like a vehicle for a AAA game, like, and you have to solve a problem with this particular design, and that problem usually is like, what are the constraints of the world it's in, and how does the player interact with it, or like is this character in this TV show comedic? How do they connect with the audience? That's the problem you have to solve.
Yeah, and that's what it's called, character design. It's not like character art.
It's not character art, even though sometimes it is, I guess.
Yeah, but then that's more fan art. But your character design is designing somebody with a purpose. Yeah, so it's yeah. So the rest of your week, you've just been working on this project as well.
Yeah. So full time, I'm still doing that crazy thing that I don't think I want to mention publicly yet, but I will eventually. When I can.
Yes.
And then freelance, and then Inktober, obviously, which tonight I'm going to get back to it because I took a slight self-imposed break to do that.
Yeah.
That self-imposed crazy crunch on my freelance work, and that's about it. Like work is I'm counting myself so fucking lucky right now. Like, yeah. God, I'm living something that I should not be living yet, but because I am, I'm just gonna go with it,
You should be too, because you're super talented and we all know it. So yeah, shut up, Colin.
Yeah. Okay.
So my week, hand-ins for university. Most guys who know have been in education, those deadlines come thick and fast. Again, like I said, I've been just slacking the last couple of weeks when I shouldn't have been, so I was paying for it the last couple of nights. But I did get stuff finished, and I actually was surprised to what level I got it finished to. Actually, I'm quite, I did send Colin the mock-up gun.
Was that the French gun and the toaster?
Yeah. So yeah, again, for only 2-3 days work, I would say. Both those, that was, I think it was not bad.
Those look pretty much ready to be skinned.
Yeah, pretty much. So I was actually quite impressed. I could turn things around. When actually it's given another boost in confidence, because when I finished it, and the time I finished it and to the level I finished it, I was sitting there like, what the fuck was I so worried about? Like, why was I panicking so much? Like, when I sat down and physically put my mind to it, like, I done it, and it was to a decent, for my eyes, a decent standard. To most guys who are higher in modelers, whatever, but yeah, I did look at that and think, and like, again, my topology is 100%, but, I did look at that at the end and think, that's good. Like, I've never, most people look at the work and think, that's shit, I could have done so much better, and I probably could have done so much better in so many areas, but I did eventually look at that at the end and look and think, no, that's actually quite decent. I've done an okay job in that. So
one thing about modeling is, like, it's one thing to model a thing and then be like, hey, look, I made a model. It's something entirely different to make a model that's correct and has no, like, topology errors and vertices on top of vertices. Like, that shit is difficult,
Yeah, definitely, especially if you're just gonna be building the tries as well. You're just setting yourself for disaster. But yeah. So yeah, I got that done, and then the next rollout, I said to Colin earlier, is basically skinning them, rendering them, and then put them in Unreal Engine, ready for game. And then I think we have Christmas break.
So that's the assignment then, like, produce assets that are game ready?
Basically, yeah. We have a first step panda, which is this, which is basically the first step modeling, and then the second stage is going to be skinning them up, basically, put them through. Well, I'm going to put them through Substance, and then straight in Unreal. And that would be the end of trimester 1.
I got a question. Does the gun have moving parts?
Mine's does, yeah, but that wasn't a part of the brief. You could just make it as like a plain face gun with just buttons. Like, it didn't have to physically function, like engineering wise. But I did include coils and springs and the lever arches that would obviously
things that could be eventually rigged and animated.
Yeah. Also, like, in my final render, I had some like case, because I couldn't animate it fully, but I had some like empty casings like flying out the side of the chamber, and like the clips come in and out separate. They're full of bullets. So yeah, and I also done what they call the rifling inside of the gun. So like the kind of spiral effect, the metal that goes down the chamber that pushes the bullet out. So I've done wee bits extra here and there. So I was quite chuffed at the end, but I managed to do. So yeah. Yeah,
I remember watching those Halo 5 sprint videos, and when they were pulling apart like the pistol, everything worked, and like one modeler did that. Like it was one guy with obviously like a ton of feedback too. But when you do a weapon like that and it has to be game ready, then like I'm doing it again. I'm so tired. So yeah, oh god. I just got up for a second and I'm going through a head rush. Hold on.
Collect your thoughts, Colin.
Collect my thoughts. Don't make a fool of myself. So yeah, like just making sure that it actually animates and moves is really important.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like even one of the sprints I saw, the guy had like a rocket launcher kind of thing, and the animation was like when it discharged the rocket, this kind of thing came out and pushed the rocket out, then turned and then moved back in. And I was
yeah, that's the the I think it's the 6-shot thing.
yeah. But I did look at that and like, holy shit, someone has to animate that like part by part, frame by frame. Animation, man. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
like if I ever got a job in 3D, it would definitely going to be just like exclusively modeling because how many animates? Oh fuck that! No, like animation.
You're like my friend Andre. He's like a master modeler, but
yeah.
He's definitely competent when it comes to stuff like animation, but he really prefers modeling and texturing because like it's just it's so much less complicated.
Yeah. There's less moving parts. I think literally. I think that's probably why it's.
Yeah. As soon as shit starts moving, things go a little crazy.
Yeah, I can attest to that. Okay, so relatively normal weeks for us, but we will now dive into our official podcast topic.
Here we go.
Here we go, the big talk. So about a week ago, I actually was listening to a podcast with the guys at Kinda Funny, and if you know the guys, they were ex-IGN, Greg Miller, Colin Moriarty.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they done a podcast on PlayStation.
They did Up at Noon, I think.
Yeah, way back in the day, but they have their own whole YouTube channel, Patreon thing set up.
Nice.
Doing really well. But they do a couple of shows. One of the shows they do is called PS I Love You, XOXO, and it's like a PlayStation podcast, still one of the most popular PlayStation podcasts on the net. And they talked about like everything to do with PlayStation, blah blah. But then they had this whole episode called "Was Uncharted Worth It?" So when I listened to it, I didn't really think much of it. But further in, Colin actually reads out a statement about
You did?
Yeah. So there's a statement about this podcast called Designer Notes. So it's a podcast where they talk about game development.
Right.
And the guys at the time talked to Amy Hennig, who is the ex-head writer at Naughty Dog, and before that also Crystal Dynamics, way back in the day. And she basically talked to them about game development and how it has become the process it's became, basically. Like why it is what it is and why it is the way it is.
Why the status quo is the way it is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I'm going to read just a little bit here from Eric's interview, and then we'll get into it. But I really need to read it because it kind of sets the stage for what she's talking about. So obviously at the time, when I read this, Colin also reads it out as well. But yeah, I'll read it out. So Amy Hennig calls AAA development an arms race that is unwinnable, where crunch is still a big problem. So one of the paragraphs that I'm going to read, and the only one, which is just encompasses the whole thing she talks about, is. With a CV that includes Crystal Dynamics and Naughty Dog and Electronic Arts, Amy Hennig has worked in AAA console development for more than 20 years. But reaching that cutting edge and staying there demands significant personal sacrifice. And Hennig believes the AAA industry has reached a point where something's got to give. So, even back as early as I can remember, looking back to, when we first started this podcast and I talked about what got me into wanting to get into games development and games art, was watching the making of DVDs that they released.
Dude, same with me.
Yeah.
I remember watching those Halo 2 videos over and over again when Halo 3 was about to come out, and I'm just like, anything Halo, I need to watch it. But that shit was so cool.
Yeah, and obviously stuff like Gears of War, some of the first Cliffy B stuff I saw when they were first making that game.
When he had like that crazy fucking hair.
Yeah, and all the God of War 3 stuff. And Fallout. There's been so many because it's so great now to draw back the curtain and look into games development in a personal way. But the thing that I always knew, even before I started drawing my first PC art, was that a thing called crunch existed in the industry. And this was way back, you're talking early 2000s, I was watching these things, and that was still commonplace. But even as far as back as probably 96 and earlier, it has existed, and even to this day, it still is here.
Yeah.
And, me and Colin, me being completely inexperienced and Colin being slightly inexperienced because obviously he's just started his job, but we're both well aware of crunch and what it entails and what it's about, because you hang enough, around enough professionals or enough in industry talks, you know what it's all about. It's the time. I'll break it down for people who don't know, but crunch is, they call it crunch because you try to crunch as much time in as you can, but it's the point or there's usually sometimes there's multiple crunches throughout the pipeline or the term of making the game.
Definitely, yeah.
But usually it is sometimes towards the end of the game where they're trying to get as much done as quickly as they can. So people basically will work 10 to 12-hour days, if longer. Weekends.
Which translates to like 80 to 120 hours a week.
Yes, weekends,
like
extra hours.
in fucking insane
holidays,
shit like that.
Yeah, loads of stuff. And, you know, I think people part and parcel just for years and years have just accepted like this exists. This is
normal. This is the thing that just can't change. It's part of the process.
Whereas in any other industry, unless you're extremely high level, we're talking like CEO level.
It's been more or less stamped out of a lot of other industries.
Yeah, because a lot of
not everything, but definitely a few.
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to say one of the biggest parts of that, I think, is because nearly every other industry in the world has been unionized at one point. So people fighting for basically human rights, where the games industry and a lot of other art-based jobs, that just doesn't exist because people feel in these industries that you should be lucky to be there. You know, you shouldn't want to lift your head and say anything because you're lucky to have a job. You're lucky the studio's still open, so don't complain. Which there's two sides of the coin to that. I can understand where people come from, where game developing is hard. It's hard securing that next contract. It's hard securing that next game. So when you get that money, you get that job, you should be happy. I'm totally with that. But you know, when Amy, you know, when you read it, it's very harrowing when you read about her interview. She talks about how, you know, she would work 7-hour weeks, 7 days a week. You know, she doesn't have kids or a family. You know, a lot of that was her personal choice, but she was saying, I couldn't understand how people could have kids, who could have a family. You know, there was, you know, like even a couple of weeks ago, we were talking to a couple of girls who, you know, came from a local studio. We talked about how all they work is 8 to 4. They don't work weekends. They're very lucky. They're treated very well. But they had a friend even a while back who went for an interview at EA and he got accepted, and then they were having a little tour around the studio, and he actually turned down the job because as he was walking through the studio, there was like sleeping bags under people's desks.
Oh my god.
So he was like, oh, holy shit. Like,
that reminds me of, like, I'm not even kidding, the 4th year animation studio at Sheridan. Like, we had a fucking mattress in there, but like, even though that's not great, that is school, and your entire career and your health. I mean, yes, actually, technically, your health is sort of like, you know, like you need to keep your health. But I think, as bad as it is, school is kind of a different thing because it's not something that lasts 20 years. It's you know,
and most times it was closed. Well, you're only in. Well, in my case, I'm only in 2 or 3 days a week. A lot of the stuff, you know, it's kind of like, you know, you have this deadline, but you know, if I had modeled that stuff and actually stuck my head in it, you know, into it when I needed to, I could probably could have had maybe 2 weeks off where I didn't really have to work, you know, and
during which you could do even more work to make yourself better. But yeah,
but it's a thing, like you said, you know, in university you're only pushed enough as you need to be pushed. Like it's like you said when you're talking to Matt, like university is one of the things that the more you put into it, the more you'll get back.
Exactly. And if you're one of those people that like fucking squeezes every ounce of shit you can get out of it, then you're gonna do well.
Yeah. Or if you're one of the guys who does enough to get by, then
you'll do well if you're really, really lucky, but you know, like making your own luck is also known as working really fucking hard.
Yeah, and like we talk about, you know, there's no such thing as talent, there's no such thing as luck, as time on task. So I've got to agree, you know, and you know that's why and this is why the last 6 months I have been pushing myself, because I know at the end of the term I'm going to have to fucking prove myself. But but artists working in these industries are, I think, and like, you know, I talked to a couple of guys at IW, and they were talking about how there's been this influx the last couple of years because of concept art becoming so well known. You know, studios have been spoiled by artists. You know, they're getting 1,000 applicants, but like for one job, whereas it used to be like 1,000 applicants and like 900 of them were just shit people who couldn't draw to save themselves. Now
they just didn't even know what they were getting into.
Yeah, and now it's like, you know, nearly 2/3 of those applicants are working professionals looking for real work, and that's because, you know, there's so many studios now. There's so many ways to contact people through email, through travel, and people can move now. As studios, you know, like we say, the popular thing is when people complain about their job, the guy will say, well, that's great, but there's 10 guys at the back of you who want your job, and they're just as fucking hungry. So, you know, count your blessings. You know, don't fucking speak up and get back to work.
Now get back to work for you, like on your like 85-hour week there, buddy.
Yeah, like, and it worries me as well, because I'm now even at the age where I'm a lot older than Colin, and, you know, 31, and when I eventually get a job, you know, a couple of years down the line, I will be thinking about kids, and, you know, one of the things kind of
you can't risk the kind of stability that comes with a full-time position.
Yeah, basically.
If you have kids, like you just can't risk that.
Yeah, but then at the same time, I'm not wanting to be away from my kids to the point, I basically don't get to raise them, because as a cohabited, if you're going to be in a relationship with another person, you're not going to want to make them fall back and do all of the parenting while you're off working. And especially
This is not fair.
No, especially in the UK. I mean, like, I could even see sometimes a reasonable thing for like guys at Blizzard who work so much because they get paid like these massive salaries, nearly $100,000 a year. But as a junior artist, you're talking I would be making like between 18 and £20,000 a year. I could get that shoveling snow for the council. Like it's there's so much easier ways to make money. Like even before I left my job, I was on £24,000 as an engineer. And like my job was, I'm not going to say like ridiculously easy, but there was days where it was easy and I could come in and go home and not have done much work and I got paid for it. And I mean, like, this is the thing we're talking about, how like we had a conversation like earlier as well, like people who get into jobs in the industry, especially in the entertainment industry, who are I'm not going to say lazy, but people who just aren't like other people who will try as hard as they can all the time and get paid the same amount of money. And it's, you're wanting to be setting up an industry going in forward with people who are coming in now who can have a life as well as work.
Although if you look at people like that who are kind of just coasting by, if you look at them and they're sitting beside someone who is like a real, and I'm gonna say try hard, but use it as like like an endearing term. Tryhards are awesome when it comes to people who put a lot of work in. If you look at those two people, they may be doing the same job, but not for much longer. Like that person who's putting in a shitload of work, eventually just by virtue of them doing all that work, somehow, some way, the universe is gonna see that and be like, let's like bump this person up a little bit. So like they're eventually gonna move on to better things. Whereas the person who isn't doing nearly as much or doesn't think they need to, they're gonna stay where they are. And if they're cool with that, then that's absolutely fine. If they want to stay there, if they're comfortable with that, then that's their choice. And like, who are we to judge? But like, it's always good to strive for more, because it's like the day you stop progressing and growing is, I can't remember what motivational speaker said this, but it's basically the day you start to die, and that's not good.
And it's a double-edged sword, because you were just at Edge Control and you listened to Anthony Jones talk, and he talked about how he had this illustrious career for years and years and years, where he was basically at the top of his game and he was working really hard, but then he got to a point he was like, I'm not looking after my kids, I'm neglecting my wife, I need to have a life outside of my art. And then even now, with him having some, I can say this because he's had it all over his Facebook. He's not really hiding it, but Anthony has now had a couple of medical issues where he's having, headaches and real problems, and they're getting to the source of it now. They guess to have surgery, but I think a lot of that has been brought on by stress and working those long hours.
Stress and fear can literally kill, and like it seems crazy to think about it if you never lived through it. And I personally haven't had any major health concerns brought on by that kind of stuff, but the amount of people that have, I can totally believe it. So getting back to crunch, like it's so hard to tell someone in a position where they're being exploited and being forced to crunch without being properly compensated, or just being forced to crunch in general. It's so hard to tell them to get out of there, but it's worth it for your health just to do that, and I don't even know how to say that.
And it's difficult because the studios have such finite times to make these things for people, like Amy talks about Uncharted 3, like there's a really good paragraph here she talks about, she says, Uncharted 3 was hard because even though we had 2 years again, it was 2 years after the projects that were a crunch, basically. She said, referring to the project's development cycle, it was a time where we were also trying to grow as a studio and split into 2 teams and deal with all the recruitment issues that went into that, and try to figure out what the face of the success of the second game was going to be, and they still only had 2 years to meet all those challenges, so it was at any time, because the industry is, like we said, still so young. Every turn you're kind of like, well, how do we do this? What is a clever way to make this game quickly? What tools can we use to streamline everything that we're doing? Are we doing everything properly? Should we maybe employ more guys? Should we employ less guys and make them work harder? And
it really comes down to the pipelining and planning that comes at the very beginning of the project. Like if not enough time is put into that, if you just decide to do things as you've always done them, you're going to have the same result as you had before, or at least very similar.
Yeah, and it's so much pressure, and I totally get it, but I think people have to start being so realistic. I mean, we're going to use this as an example, and I hate to do this because being more in the game development community now, I know what goes into making a game more, and I know how hard it can be, but we look at the example of No Man's Sky and Hello Games and Sean Murray, and
here we go.
yeah, for like how many weeks people have talked about this. But you know, when Sean approached Sony with the idea for No Man's Sky and said, "Look, we've got this algorithm. It makes these infinitely generating worlds. People could explore this to no end. Yeah, you know, something they could buy, they would play forever. We could, you know." He must have had something in the back of his mind that must have said, "Can I do this?" And obviously something was blocking it out, so he was like, "Yeah, I can." But
with 15 people.
yeah, I mean, he must have, you know, Sony were like, "You've just put out Joe Danger for the iPad, right?" And they were like, "Yeah, but we can do this game now." Okay, what's your staff? We currently have 15. No, 15. I never knew if that was 15 people who are working on the game, or you're talking like 2 people of them are admin. I don't know. But like, even 15 people for a game like that is a really fucking. I mean, some indie teams now are like 20 guys. Like for small mobile games, you know.
If you look at a game like Joe Mad's Battle Chasers, that's like, I don't know how many people are on that.
Oh, I couldn't tell you, but I mean, imagine with Joe's experience, he probably would staff it as he needs be. But yeah,
I think it is a smaller scale game, and I don't want to misquote or like say anything that's just blatantly wrong, but. Yeah. I think it's between like 12 and 24 people, and for a game like that, that's probably fine.
Yeah, and it exists in a lot of 2D realms. I mean, it's no to diss anything that is 2D, but we both know it is a simpler architecture to make.
Exactly, like you do one painting, and if in like an isometric or like top down game like that, that's your whole damn map right there.
Yeah, pretty much. Whereas when you have to build something in 3D like that, when you have to build something in 3D like that, that's just infinitely more complicated, you know, because you've not only got to model it, you've got to rig it, you've got to render it, and you've got to like paint it, and oh god, light it, fucking yeah. So you know,
I definitely think like considering things like this, you know, whether you're super new to the industry like me, or whether you're like right on the edge of it like Gordon. Thinking about this stuff and learning about all these issues and problems before you go in, or maybe right after you're in my case, it's really important to be aware of this stuff. And whether you have an opinion on it or not, just learn the facts first and then form your opinions.
I mean, like, we're not sitting here as like a political broadcast and trying to be like all, you know, left wing for the people and say, you know, oh well, of course, you know, we're wanting to make sure that this is abolished and this is wrong, and you know. We're not trying to stand on a soapbox here and tell you guys like how the industry should be. Of course not.
This is bad. Accept our opinions or die, bitches.
Basically, yeah. I mean, we're just trying to, like Colin says, make people aware, because I think there is so many people who get into this industry and have no idea what's involved. You know, Feng would talk about, you know, a lot of his students when they'd say, you know, how often do you draw per day? And they would say, oh, I don't know, like 2 to 3 hours a day. And he'd be like, well, you have no fucking chance of making it in this industry, because you have to be drawing harder and faster than the guy behind you to have a job. And that's
faster.
Yeah, it's just like, it's such a sad fact that you didn't want to say to people, you know, only the best will survive, because we both know from experience there's people who can get jobs who sometimes don't really deserve jobs. So yeah, it's like, we know there's people exist that can be lazy or can just get by coasting, but
you know what? Actually, taking Joe Mad as an example, I don't know where this quote came from. I actually know I do know where it came from. I just don't know if it's official. But back when he was in his like Marvel intern and like, you know, early Marvel Comics days, I think the number that was being thrown around, like how many hours a week he drew. I don't know if he said this in an interview or if it was just made up, but I'd believe it because of the way he draws now. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Something ridiculous like 60 to 80 hours a week just of like pure drawing practice. I don't know if that was outside his work.
You're talking about 10 hours average a day. Drawing.
Yeah, like it's most of your day.
Yeah, but then again, he was such a hobbyist. Like, he drew all the time in the spare time. That's all he wanted to do was draw.
Well, he drew and he played video games is what he did.
Pretty much. So I mean, the guy has just been. I mean, people say like, oh, that's a freak of nature, like guys like Jim Lee and stuff. But it's just guys who want it. Like, it's like those motivational speakers. Like, do you want it that bad? You know, are you willing to? People like, you're willing to die for it. You're obviously not going to die for it, but like, you know, people who are like, it must be the only thing that enters your mind. But this obviously leads back into the crunch where we talk about how shooters are spoiled by artists, because these guys are so passionate and they will work for nothing, you know. And you know, like you said with the story about the guys have sleeping bags under their desks, and people are like, oh well, that's just
or a really dirty fucking mattress.
Yeah, I mean, you could see, like, as Sean was going through each individual interview before the games lead up to release, like, he was looking worse and worse, like so tired and so drained, and it must have just
for No Man's Sky guy.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is, you know, he he looked so destroyed by the end of it. Like he was just a wreck of a guy. He was such a hollow shell. He was like.
And unfortunately, he's like I don't know if this is gonna follow him forever, but he's kind of known as the guy who fucked up No Man's Sky.
Yeah, and it's a shame because the guy's obviously poured his heart into the game, but
I don't even think he fucked it up. Like it comes back to one of those things where like I don't even know if it was entirely his fault. I think it was his fault for saying yes, I can do this, but I don't think it was his fault for Sony. And I don't know how much you know how much Sony pushed him to do it, but. Yeah. You know, and or if he could even back out, because you know once they start the hype train, you know how do you stop that kind of thing?
Yeah, he probably
maybe it was a
it
was probably a contract or something that he signed, because that's usually how these things go.
Yeah, I was going to say that maybe when he sat down with the idea, they were like, right, this is cool, we can fund you, but you need to make it in 2 years, and he was like, okay, that's cool. How much money are you giving me? And he'd be like, okay, this much. And he'd be like, oh, that's going to pay 15 star for 2 years, but like I maybe need a bit more. And he'd be like, well, you can take it or leave it. Like the thing is, people are still waiting for Sean to come out and speak about it and categorically say like, was it his fault? Was it Sony's fault? Was it the studio's fault? Like who actually was at fault? And that's a double.
Well, if he comes out and blames Sony, then Sony may come down like a ton of bricks, so he's in a really difficult spot.
Yeah, really is, because obviously if he takes like the sole responsibility, that'll just create a backlash as well for people being like, well, you fucked up, you'll probably get blacklisted from working in the game industry. I mean, like there's obviously so many, but again, it's about pressure. Like we're talking about how studios are under pressure all the time to make these games, and this is why crunch exists. But it really should be something that should be going the way of the dodo. And you know, Thomas Scholl said it when he sat in the panel at IW, when somebody asked about crunch and what it is to work it, and he said if your studio is still incorporating crunch into their pipeline, then they're not planning their pipeline properly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, because people will obviously make a pipeline and say, right, okay, between December and January, that's crunch. That's when we're going to do the 50-hour weeks, and people will be like, why? Why are you planning crunch?
Exactly. Yeah. Like why are you acknowledging ahead of time that this is a thing that has to happen? Like hire more people, add money to your budget, or roll back your scope.
Yeah.
And if for example your publisher's like, oh yeah, 2 weeks from deadline, can you put this feature in, please?
Yeah.
You know, you have to be in a position where you can say, like if you're Rockstar or CD Projekt Red or Bethesda, you can be in the position to say, fuck no, we're gonna release the game as is, because we can't do that.
Yeah. And again, it's the thing that pops in my mind there when you mention CD Projekt Red. You know, knowing now Marston and Marek. And they talk about like what they worked. You know, their team is exceptionally small, and they produced The Witcher 3. What the fuck? Like, it's unbelievable the amount of work. You look at anybody who knows, not even just as an artist, as a gamer, and The Witcher 3 is one of the biggest worlds that exist in games. It's so rich.
Biggest, and not only biggest, but it's like it's not just a big empty space. It's like a big space full of a ton of shit. So
missions and creatures and magic and Jesus fucking Christ, like. And
so what I think probably about them is, I remember I was just like, I'm continuously amazed, but what it is either they're all about to die because they're so overworked, or they plan that shit with like an inhuman amount of accuracy. Which I mean, if you put a whole bunch of people together in a room and a couple of weeks. You know, TV animation and like even some feature animation studios do that shit all the time, and they've got it down to a science. But as you were saying, they've been around for a hell of a lot longer.
Yeah, and TV's one of the things I think that you get away with a lot, because even, you know, a lot of guys who have turned me on to the documentary, I think it's a great watch, is 6 Days to Air, and it follows Trey Parker and Matt Stone making a South Park episode in 6 days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is crazy when you think in animation that you can produce start to finish, idea to finished piece of animation in 6 days.
Even as crude visually as it is, like you still have to produce that like any other TV episode.
Oh shit, yeah. Like they were getting to like the one I watched is the Human Centipede episode, and they were which is an amazing episode. But they were literally down to the wire where it was like 2 days to deadline. Trey still hadn't like finished a lot of the scripting. And he was like eating McDonald's and panicking and be like, "What the fuck, man? This is never going to get finished. I'm so like stressed." And yeah, they said like they've just worked that way forever, and that's what works with them. But you know, I think it's just stress is put on everybody. And you know, like Amy was saying, guys not seeing their kids, guys not going home, guys sleeping at the office, and
it's not healthy. And is that worth it? You know?
Yeah, and I mean, like. You know, Colin Moriarty was talking about it on the PlayStation podcast, and he was like, No, it's not. You know, they're fucking video games. There's no way that you should be killing yourself making these games. Like, you know, and like even one of the guys at IW, you know, and I didn't know his underlying health issues, but you know, I just caught what he put up the next day. But he was taken to hospital the second day at the IW, the workshop, because he was so sick, and I think it was because he was overworked. And when you're hospitalizing yourself for your job, no, no, just
No,
no,
no job is worth that much. Like
definitely not.
unless you're like a doctor in Syria and you're under fire,
Yeah,
like no other job should be putting you in the kind of, crazy, like health issues that something like gaming can do to you, you know?
yeah, definitely. I mean, even like yourself, you know, you'll say, you know, you work at Elliot Animation, you know, and you know, you're talking to George about his experiences. You know, what was his kind of cliff notes from Crunch, or what's he experienced during that
So
time?
George worked at Nelvana in the 80s.
Wow.
And Nelvana was kind of a Wild West sort of studio back then, and
Yeah.
it's no surprise because this is in their official history book. That
Hmm.
studio for a while was kept afloat by cocaine deals
Wow.
and shit like that. And of course George was not part of that because he's
Yeah.
been like a straight shooter since the beginning. But
Yeah.
actually, here's something crazy about George. The guy has like he when he was in there, he was pulling like multiple all-nighters a week.
Wow.
And like for example, I can't remember how he told it. I think it was when he was on the design team. I don't know if it was for Droids or for another show, but
Mhm.
like the whole design team got one package to do, and he got one package to do, like the work of a whole bunch of other people, and he did it. And George is a short sleeper. Like he sleeps 3 to 4 hours a night, and he's good. So he can get up and keep going, and he can
Yeah.
do the work of many, many people. But people like George are very, very rare.
Rare. Yeah.
Most people can't do that. Like I can't do that. I need a good solid 6 to 8 hours of sleep, or I'm fucked.
Yeah.
And but from George's experience, for example, running Elliot, he said like if there's crunch, and sometimes there is, it's usually towards the beginning of the project,
Yeah.
mostly when you're setting up assets. But what sort of as things sort of start to kick off and go through, it smooths out because normally like if crunch happens at the beginning, it's not very bad, and it's only because you're producing like a ton of assets for the TV show to sort of get it up and rolling again.
Yeah. Definitely.
But he said like even a lot of other animation houses in Toronto, like things are a lot worse there than they are at Nelvana now or at Elliot. Like Elliot is really, really well run, and I'm really, really happy to be there because like if like I said before, if there's a problem in production, from what I've seen, those things get solved really, really fast. And the a solution might not be perfect, and everyone might not like it, but like things move along really quickly, and you don't stay stuck on one problem for any long period of time. So crunch is definitely a thing, but it's not like a crazy big thing that kills people.
Yeah. And
At least in George's business, where he's planning everything down to a T. But as soon as you go outside Elliot, it's a whole other world.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, like, it casts back to a story I actually spent some time reading, which was the Nitrogen studio that produced the animation for Sausage Party for Seth Rogen's film.
Heard all about that.
Yeah, I mean, that was like a huge thing in the media for like a long, long time about, guys getting kicked off their project or leaving and getting blacklisted, or then leaving like after working on it for 2 years and getting their name off the credits. And
Yeah, like this shit is stuff that really happens. Like holy fuck.
yeah, every day, and more studios. And that's what I'm saying. Like, guys like the guys who run the studios are always like I said before, there's 10 guys at the back of you who want your job. Be thankful
Yeah.
you're here.
And I mean, like, it's not every studio in the industry that's like this, but it
Yeah.
happens too much to not be an isolated problem.
Yeah, I mean, like, we're painting a very kind of bleak picture here, but please understand that there is a lot of studios in the world that work to a great working time directive, and they do look after their artists, and they are happy to help people with holidays and maternity and whatever else. But we're talking about like the overall thing, which is, you think actually, I say there's a lot of studios that work well, but some of the bigger AAA guys are still working at this. Um, there's particular ones, we'll not name by name because me and Colin might want to eventually work at some of them. There is some large AAA studios who are very keen on using crunch as a method to get stuff pushed out quickly, and I think that's wrong, and I think we really need to look at it as a group, as people moving forward, and change it, because it's going to be our industry and the place we grow up, the place people who are younger than us are going to come into, and we want it to be a safe environment. We don't want these people to be hurting themselves, getting sick, not seeing their friends or their kids or their family, and yeah, just making the place just a great place to work. And I'm not saying it's got to be like skateboards and scooters up and down the halls like in Naughty Dog, but at the same time, but the thing is, you talk about Naughty Dog and you always see it's such a great studio to work at, but Amy just came out and said that it was a bad place to work. That's why she left. She just couldn't take the workload anymore. It was killing her. And this is a girl who's worked in the industry for 20 plus years. Even back at Crystal Dynamics, I remember her working on the Legacy of Kain series, and that set of games was like one of the biggest influences in me as a gamer for years and years and years. I love the Legacy of Kain series, Soul Eater and all that. But then she moved on to work for Naughty Dog. She made the first Uncharted. She wrote the first and second one, and then also wrote the third one. And then just before she left, she finished up number 4. And it makes me sad that I think going forward, if we don't get another Uncharted game, it'll be because Amy's influence isn't there, and that's sad because you think the guys at the time would have looked at Amy's conditions and what she was maybe complaining about at the time, or I've not totally looked into the article and I'm still to listen to the podcast in depth, but you would think at the time if they were going to lose Amy, they would really sit down and be like, fucking hold on a minute here, this girl,
what are we doing here?
This woman has been responsible for this game's being as big as it is. Like, why the fuck are we letting her go? What are we doing? Are we crazy? And it's sad because I'm going back, you're talking actually 2 years ago now, I can remember listening to Games Podcast and there was news stories coming out every week about people leaving the Uncharted series, like their lead animators, their lead character designers, a couple of the story guys, and then eventually Amy left. And then people were like, what the fuck is happening at Naughty Dog? Is this game ever going to get finished? And you
know what, like you also hear about, like, it's not just her, you hear about people all over leaving companies like Blizzard, leaving big AAA gaming studios like QBrush, for example. Mark Burnett left. We don't know why he left, because he was there for like 10 years, but he's gone and he's struck out on his own, and he's doing really, really well for himself because he's got his online company selling tutorials and making free stuff to teach people. And like, why did he do that? Why did he leave Blizzard? Maybe it was for personal reasons, or maybe it was similar to what we're talking about here. Maybe it just got too crazy.
Well, I mean, like, I think he was saying that, well, he explained it in his video. I watched the first one after he left, and he said that the reason was that he was happy at Blizzard, which I can believe, because I can actually see Blizzard as being a really good place to work, because I've heard so many good stories about that place. Like,
Same with me, yeah.
How awesome it is to work there. They have a dank meme wall. What the fuck?
Yeah. They give people a stein and a sword and a shield for working there. And those things are great. But my friend Will, a while ago, he went to tour their campus, and like, it's literally a campus, like a university level thing. Like, it's at least in Irvine, it's crazy.
And that's probably going to be part of the reason people want to work there, because they have their shit down. They don't have to rely on stuff like crunch. They know their games and they know how to plan them out. But then, like, I mean, he spoke about, like, he was really leaving because of QBrush, and because it was making so much money, it was taking so much of his time. He was like, why am I staying in this job? Well, I can run this, be my own boss, and make money. So he just done it.
And the other thing is, like, I think going back to things like personal projects that I've taken on and I've done, I find it a lot easier to, like I'll take my film, for example. I put a stupid amount of work into that thing, and like, it ended up working out. It was fine. I got a job, able to show it to still able to show it to people, and they go like, well, shit, you do this yourself? And I'm just like, yes, I did. But the point is that, like, to pull something off like that, I had to plan it out literally down to a T, not knowing anything about planning. And I was willing to put in more hours than I think were even necessary to do that kind of thing, because it was my own personal project and personal thing that I really wanted to do and I believed in. And I think that's just innately, naturally a lot easier to do than when you're working for someone else.
I can remember looking at your sheet for your project planning, and it was meticulous. Like, it
was immense. I don't even know how the fuck I put that shit together.
And that, you were saying even at the time when I was looking at that was like the third draft or something like that. You'd done iterations past that were even more detailed.
There were, like, I realized I had to teach myself how to do this, because if I didn't plan this thing, it was not going to get done, or it was going to get done, but it was going to be fucking shit. And there are parts of it that I'm like, okay, I probably could have done that better, but overall I'm like this does not look like the work of one person. And the way I did that was planning it out so damn well, and scheduling my time and making sure I wasn't killing myself, taking breaks, playing video games, going out with people, but like doing that enough to keep myself sane and motivated as well. And like that's all you have to do. We should maybe to start closing out, one of the things we should bring up again is, now that we've talked about how bad crunch is and how it probably shouldn't be a part of production, what are some solutions that have already been put forward that can slowly start to phase it out of the industry?
Well, I mean, one I really actually thought a lot about was one that is currently in progress, and I think it is a great system, is that you look at Call of Duty, okay, for example. A game comes out nearly every year now, or does come out every year, and the way that Activision has tackled that is
multiple studios.
Yeah, so you've got redundant studios running side by side that make a game. When one finishes, the other one's still halfway through, then that finishes, and so they're overlapping. Yeah, so and that's a unique situation because you're making two games of the same franchise every year. Understand that, but what if you could split the work between two studios? What if, for instance, the latest game that I mean, Rockstar do it. Rockstar have one franchise where they usually make something like Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead or whatever, and they have multiple studios working on different assets all the time. And if that could be in the scope for something like that, then that probably would solve a lot of issues with crunch and with people not doing enough stuff or not having enough staff. It's a unique situation that probably applies to a few studios, but that's maybe one way you could run it. Like, rather than saying, even for example, when Sean Murray took on Hello Games' strategy of making No Man's Sky, Sony could have been like, well, we have this massive big studio, they've got experience with da-da-da-da.
Or even just like a little, like a whole bunch of little outsource companies, Yeah.
I mean, there's so many, I know personally a couple of guys who worked on Division art, for Ubisoft. They weren't working for Ubisoft, they were working for a third party making concept, but, they were outsourced to do this work. And even the same way, guys like Hawk in Newcastle, who worked on Guardians of the Galaxy, they just focused on pre-production 2D, which was then taken into the studio to make the 3D stuff, but that was outsourced again through Marvel and Disney and them. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options available to do this stuff.
And one of the reasons that I know that works, or I know that it's possible, is because and again, I don't want to name names or name studios or say exactly what I'm doing, but that is essentially what I'm doing at Elliot right now. We've been contacted by a certain large studio to do a whole bunch of really cool outsource work. But here's the thing, going in-house to that studio and looking at how they do things, how organic the process is, and kind of how inefficient certain things are handled, we're basically having to say, because we're an outsourced studio, we can't operate like that, because we can't be doing endless iterations on this one particular thing, and it's just going to take forever, and it's just not the most efficient way of doing things. So we're basically having to impose a little bit of order on that particular process, and basically say plan it out in man weeks and put together a whole budget, even though they wanted one anyway, but do it in a way that'll allow us to, get the work done as efficiently as possible. And we're kind of hoping they may internalize a little bit of it, or at least sort of take some influence and be like, oh shit, maybe we can start to push our production in this direction, because even imposing just a little bit of structure, a little bit of planning into something super organic will go a long way to, making it a little bit more efficient.
Yeah, and we talked about this at the start, how game studios and games industry, in fact, is so young that it's still, I think, is searching for that structure that makes games efficiently without compromising its staff, and that's something going forward. I don't think it's going to be fixed anytime soon, but with unionization, which has come the way of the guys in America who are trying to now unionize the entire animation industry and then go into the games industry. I think having people saying well, no, you can't by law treat your employees like this. They need breaks, they need rest, they need to go home. I think that'll come a long way to making things better. And again, we're not saying don't work hard at your job. Obviously, there will be times when you will need to stay a bit late at the office to help with something. Of course, that will happen. But
I'm doing it right now, but it's because I'm treated well at my job. It's because I know that if I do this, it'll be valued, even if I'm not necessarily paid anymore for it. It's just something I want to do.
Yeah,
I mean, to be in that position is probably the best position you can be in.
Oh, totally. I mean, there's an old saying of, have a company that gives a shit about their employees. You have employees that give a shit about their company. I mean,
It's like Valve. Like if you know, like if you work there, you know that like people care about you and they want you
yeah,
to do well. And then like look at what Valve has done. Like
yeah,
they're one
man.
of the most successful studios in history. Like
They are the digital platform for distributing
they
games.
don't even have to make games
No,
anymore because they transcended the need for it. It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. They work out that Gabe's kids won't need to work for about 40 years anyway. So yeah.
Well, yeah, or they could take it even farther. Who knows?
Yeah, oh well, this is it. So, but yeah, that was great. So that's us, guys. We've both kind of wrapped up about Crunch. You have any ideas or any experiences with this? Feel free to drop down in the comments. Also,
If you disagree with us, then also feel free to drop it down in the comments too,
yeah,
because
totally, man. I mean,
it's a discussion. And if you
yeah,
guys have, things to input or alternate opinions, or
mhm,
maybe we totally misquoted something, absolutely, toss
yeah,
it down there. We'll be like, oh shit, oh my god, and then we'll correct ourselves.
yeah. I mean, we're not fountains of knowledge here. I mean, like we're just stating our own personal opinion. That's what these podcasts are about. But yeah, definitely chime in, man. I mean, it's the more people get involved in these discussions, the better. And if you have a topic that you want to talk about, then definitely let us know because we're running out of ideas. No, we've got plenty coming up, but yeah, it's always good to
There are
try and
plenty of things to talk about. This
yeah,
industry and art in general is fucking huge.
yeah. There's we could have a podcast that run every hour on the hour, and there would still not be enough time. But I just want to give a quick shout out to YouTube. Colin maybe knows why. Can you think why, Colin, we are celebrating today?
Oh yeah, because 100 people.
we just hit 100 subscribers on our YouTube channel, which
It's a
is
small milestone, but it's a milestone.
yes,
We made something.
yeah. I mean, after the first 10, we were like, okay, cool. We have 10 people who want to listen to us every week, but now we have 100, which blows my fucking mind. Even the fact that again, I'll not name names, but we have been told, I have been told personally, this podcast has been getting passed around offices of certain big games companies. And they are listening avidly.
I mean, that what we're saying isn't entirely bullshit.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I mean, like people are taking an interest, and it's great, and it just pushes me and Colin. Colin. I mean, I'm busy with school and other stuff, and Colin is extremely busy with work. But we keep coming back because we know people are taking an interest, and our voices are getting heard, and it's great because it's great to become another part of this community that can be helpful and help people like myself, help people that are coming up behind me.
Talk about stuff that certain people, or talk about things like crunch, for example, that aren't that easy to talk about.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
it's not a soft topic for
Yeah.
a lot of people, especially people that have gone through it.
Yeah, and again, I know, again, not naming names, but I know people personally who have experienced it and told me the bad side of it, and that's what kind of made me want to talk about it. When I heard about Amy's, column or podcast that she'd done about it, I was like, this is probably the good time to talk about it because it's like, with obviously stuff like Hello Games and No Man's Sky, it was a great time to talk about it. So, yeah, very topical. Thanks guys for subscribing. And again, if you haven't, then what the hell are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. It's free.
Hit that damn red button.
That's it. Punch it. Like, give a comment, share it to your buddies if you want. Let me know if you're listening, and again, drop it in the comments, and me and Colin will definitely take on board what you guys have got to say. And that's us for this week. Thanks again to Colin for sparing his time, which is very valuable at this point because he's so fucking busy.
Okay, I'll live through it.
yeah, you'll be good. You'll be good, man. We'll be back again with another episode. Hopefully next week. We did have a bit of a space there, but again, because we're so busy, we're trying to fit them in where we can, but we're getting there. Hopefully, fingers crossed, an interview coming up soon for a couple of big guys. Just waiting on hear back in emails, and until then, you can check us out. Obviously, the usual places, YouTube. We're obviously now on iTunes and have been for a couple of weeks, so you can now download us through the official podcast app if you have it on your phone. And also in SoundCloud and other places. Still working on Spotify, that's coming along, but there's a bit more red tape than I thought there would be, but it will get up there eventually. Stay tuned guys, and we will catch you next week.
See you guys.
Bye.